And welcome back. We just talked about dollars and cents last segment, but besides policy questions on taxes, healthcare, foreign policy, etc., there's a growing gap when you look at the polls on key social issues and the impact on potential electorate. The divide may be moving entire groups of Americans into camps of one party or the other, and there's a lot of time between now and November, but we're certainly seeing it with the snapshot data we're getting back here, and we're seeing these examples almost every day. For example, this week, Romney foreign policy expert Richard Grenell, he quit the campaign just days after he joined it. Grenell, you see, is openly gay, and his hiring was met with comments like the following from some far-right groups. Quote, Romney's message to the pro-family community dropped dead. That from the American Family Association. And from the Simon Center, the Romney campaign needs to be unequivocally opposed to same-sex marriage and to appear to be not exactly a welcome mat for gay voters or supporters. But Romney, he's got big problems with other groups as well. If you look at the women and Latino vote numbers that are coming back here, take a look at women first. ABC News and Washington Post poll is Romney down 20 points in that demographic. The number has shifted here, but it's comfortably above 10 points in every poll. And among Latino voters, Fox News poll, it's got Romney down by astounding 56%. And some recent moves in Congress, it's not going to help the data. A lot of Republicans, no votes, and moves to block the Violence Against Women's Act, as well as continued blocks of the DREAM Act. Let's get into this. On a national level, maybe not so much because your voters know you from your time in the House and positions you've taken, but does it make a job even harder for a Republican when there's policies that seem to be turning off certain bases when it comes to the Latino voters and, as I said, some of the female voters, like the Violence Against Women Act?
You know, we need honest debates about everything and can't always be certain that we're going to be politically correct. But all I remember is that Barack Obama ran on hope and change, and I hope that Mitt Romney now runs on hope and change, because we didn't see any hope and we didn't see any change.
But let's get to, again, the parties that be, they didn't exactly speak out on this, but it's pretty telling. When an aide, by all accounts an extremely competent aide, Mr. Grenell here with foreign policy chops, quits a few days later. He's openly gay in 2012 and he's an advisor and he's being called out by these groups and now all of a sudden he drops out. What's going on?
Let me speak to that. First of all, he's openly gay and the Romney campaign hired him based on his talent and ability. They hired him knowing he was openly gay. So obviously the Romney campaign and Governor Romney have no problem with his gayness. But as you say, these right-of-center organizations were critical of the choice, and so he resigned. He was not fired.
I didn't suggest he was.
I think that's important to factor in.
No, but I'm not suggesting for a second he was fired. In fact, the Romney campaign asked him to stay on, so that's clear.
That's correct.
But my point is, listen, this election, I don't care how we chop it, Dominic says everything, it's going to be a close race. And listen, George W. Bush did pretty good with Latino voters when he ran after his time as governor of Texas. He tried to have immigration reform here. Whatever you think of good or bad of his time in office, the electorate wasn't turned off like it is now. And for anybody to vote against the Violence Against Women Act, to me, this isn't about being politically correct. It's crazy. Historically, you know, the thing went unopposed when it went through. Now all of a sudden we got issues with it. You know, you talked before from your time in there. Reagan talked about it at a big tent party here, and it seems like it's getting smaller and smaller.
Right. Well, I don't want to make it smaller, but what I do want to make sure is that while Rome's burning, we're not eating grapes, and we're not arguing about issues that have nothing to do with getting people back to work, have nothing to do with growing the economy, have nothing to do with becoming energy independent. And so we seem to love to talk about these issues when our country is in desperate straits. So I don't jump into these conversations because, frankly, they're not conversations that I think
you would have had
in.
to vote if you were a senator on the Violence Against Women Act. And 38 members.
I would have voted for it.
Right. But
what's your point?
Doesn't your own party tend to make, instead of focusing on the big issues like the Romney issue, for example, Democrats had nothing to do with this. This is stuff that becomes news here because there isn't a philosophy, it seems, and it seems to be growing smaller, that people, whether they're moderates or conservatives, can agree to disagree without demonization coming on the fringes that get a lot more play, Congressman, than they used to.
When you run to represent a population in a state, you represent that population. The population of the state of Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts and Vermont is somewhat different, and they think somewhat differently than the population in Arizona or Texas or Montana. And so to characterize Congressman Shays and myself as Republicans and therefore taking certain positions that the national level party may take is not really fair, because we come from a region of the country that thinks somewhat differently.
But what did he say about Republicans?
We're not the Mississippi Republican Party. We're not the Texas Republican Party. We're the Connecticut
sometimes
Republican
feel that way?
Exactly
But how do you push back against those elements that would take the party to a more extreme and more exclusive position?
Or have already taken them off a cliff?
Some have, some haven't.
But there hasn't been enough pushback from the Republican Party. I think you would both agree to that. So how do you begin that pushback?
You know what? There's a focus on the Republican Party. I happen to believe that I see the same craziness in the Democratic Party. No, I do. I mean, I think Nancy Pelosi is way over there. I don't think she's in most Americans are in the middle of the political spectrum, maybe leaning a little right. You got Nancy Pelosi on this side, you got Republicans on this side. And the people that both parties sought to defeat were the blue dogs, Republicans tried it, and the Republican moderates. And you've seen a lot of those moderates disappear. You're asking, what am I trying to do about it? I'm trying to get reelected. I'm trying to win an election where you have a moderate who always sought to find Democrats to co-sponsor a bill. Now, what makes us Republicans? We believe in a free market, and we believe in democracy. And when you put them together, you got great stuff.
Ronald Reagan, who I thought found a lot of times points of compromise. Him and Tip O'Neill famously over maybe a cold one or two would figure this out. But he always said that you guys should never have circular firing squads. It used to always be the Democrats with a punchline that they couldn't get out of their own way. And you guys were the more disciplined point. Not that there was unanimity, not that Mississippi and Connecticut always agreed, but it seems that you guys sometimes eat your own mouth. Look at Dick Lugar and Orrin Hatch. They're getting primaried. I mean, these guys are institutions. I mean, the fact that they have to prove their conservative stripes is crazy.
But it's still democracy. Any way you look at it.
Fair enough. All right, and one of the things of democracy, yes, I jumped in on you before you took me off there again, is elections, and there's a big one coming up in Connecticut.